Sup everybody, this is Karak with ACG, the bearded shaman of gaming, and as always, it's my continuing mission to bring you reviews for completed games that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. Today's title is another in the series of Walmart's Sam's Choice-like video game family, known as Dynasty Warriors, except this one is Dynasty Warriors Godseekers for the PS4, out this week. This is a title that takes what Dynasty Warriors is usually known for, which is over-the-top kick-ass battlers where you cut down more enemies than a McDonald's tractor taking down forests in the Amazon. Here, though, you're in turn-based battle mode, trading, traipsing through boring lands, controlling your overly gymnastic character, with taking those same overly gymnastic characters and moving them square by square by square by square in this turn-based battle grid game. Let's see how it did, shall we? As always, if you liked the video, maybe subscribe. So here's my review for Dynasty Warriors Godseekers. Hot chicks and ice, absolute fair fighting matchups, and understanding the health regenerating magic of buns and meat. Graphics are up first. So I could say this is split down the middle between good and bad, for example when you're in the overland map or when you're in the normal battle grid areas, but that'd be if I was a complete fucking liar, because the game actually doesn't look good at all, and somehow when characters move they look choppy, which is just odd when you think that this game basically went from dudes shepherding death to the sheep-like masses of their enemies like hay balers on overdrive. When you see a character group move from one space to the other and they stutter a bit, it's actually really disappointing when taken into context with prior titles. And really what's even sadder, make no mistake, this is the same engine used for the other titles, it's just adjusted and locked to particular distances from characters until you perform an action and it zooms in. So a game that could effectively juggle 344 enemies on screen seems to have a bit of an issue with like 14. Now, when the game zooms in to show you pulling off gravity-defying special moves where somehow smashing a spear into the ground causes Krakatoa-like seismic events, at those times it looks okay, with the characters appearing far closer to their main title predecessors, even if the absolutely ironed out of detail and flattened out game world continues to remain completely unspectacular. But I guess one positive is, other than the weird stutter and some of the movement, the game holds its frame rate. But that makes sense because rarely is much happening on the screen unless you're attacking anyway. There's almost nothing in the way of additional landscape animations or excellence, and in fact the easiest comparison I could make is it feels like a cheap digital board game. Due to the fairly bland overall look, unit identification is also far less visually represented and more something that you rely on your HUD for, which just feels odd in this day and age of titles where individual flair, even for basic war units, is displayed. Overall, from start to finish, except for some okay cutscenes, Dynasty Warriors Godseekers absolutely failed. This is a title where they could have used their now unused horsepower and really made interesting locations and varied locales, but instead we get the same Lego set construction of the past titles, now with more zoomed out camera angles, but somehow slower gameplay. And even in comparison to some budget level titles, this is hugely disappointing, unless of course you're in the midst of a 3-move pincer attack and then it's just mildly disappointing. Sound, music, and voice.
そのお方は仙人。我らに新たな教えをくださるのだ。勝手に触るな。
And of course, sound is up first. Well, remembering that for the most part, these are the same sounds from the previous Dynasty Warrior games. They do have a higher frequency crush we always expect, where swords and spears hitting enemies sound more like that buzzer that you win a Chuck E. Cheese ticket game on. It just fits even less here, unfortunately. And it really feels like two games, a splitting of the sound spectrum, with the overland map and its menus sounding generally as I think you would expect from a game like this, but then hammering down into the major gameplay elements, and you have this completely odd tonal layer that almost fits with the other titles, but sounds ridiculously tinny in comparison here. Now this is proof positive that the theme of a title and its mechanics are very important in grounding the soundscape, and it is not done very well here. Music. So this is a bit all over the place. While there's little here to differentiate itself from titles prior, that's not to say that they don't have some great tracks. Unfortunately, mechanically, once again, we see some problems here when switching genres. Huge soaring violin solos in the typical Dynasty Warrior tunes in the main scenes and menus and overland map mean excellent instrument choice and haunting melodies throughout. Then you jump down into the battle maps, and as always, it usually switches to what sounds like three guys who hate moving their fingers on guitar strings, just long solo wails. That's actually usually fine as well. for a bit. See, here the problem is there just is no rest whatsoever. No matter where you are, the music's just fucking wailing in the background. What happens is you get this thematic numbness that can occur, where track 47 of violins wailing in the background magically gets switched to track 13 of heavy guitars doing the same thing, and you're still sitting in the item menu trying to decide if you should have your character plop down and cook up some yum-yums to heal or just soldier on. Another proof positive moment that you really can't magically switch camera angles and theme of a game and expect everything to just work wonders throughout. And of course, that brings us to voice. Now, good Japanese voices without English dubs that seem to impart the emotion you would expect from two peeps who just found out that they are the key to once again saving pretty much everything and everyone. What I was very happy with here is the English grammar and writing in the subs. There were a couple mistakes where a term was used that seemed to mysteriously change to something else, but other than that, it's actually pretty good. Another aspect I enjoyed is that everything's voiced over, aside from the Path of Destiny story moments, meaning unlike other games I've discussed recently with characters in a long series of strange affirmative grunts to start some strange paragraph-long reading marathon, here most everything's voiced all the way through. Pretty okay. And of course, going from voice means we're into gameplay and a bit about the story. Two brothers are exploring their war-torn land and find a chick frozen in ice. Typical rom-com stuff. Then they accidentally on purpose release her and find out she's an ultra-powerful being with the ability to pretty much, well, destroy everything. What follows is an intertwined story laced through the 60-plus characters you meet in the title as you battle a peasant uprising known as the Yellow Turbans. That's right. You take these well-coiffed heroes with their embroidered pants that probably cost a person's yearly wage and basically go beat the shit out of a bunch of starving peasants because they had the audacity of probably wanting weekends off. And thus it begins. And what follows is a typical series of misadventures that's not entirely new to gamers if they played Dynasty Warrior 7 with its conquest mode, except here it's an entire game and a lot of things are switched up, but there is some similarities. Basically, you travel across the main world map, going to locations, fighting the peasant uprising, and continually unlocking story bits to flesh out the overall tale. Once you find a place you want to go, you can see if the battle is a main chapter or just additional battles to grind and unlock story moments. You then pick a difficulty and are then given various options, like placing your folks in unique spots in the battlefield and setting up other options, and then you jump in. Now, once you're in the main battle proper, anyone who's played a grid-based battle game knows what's up. Each character can move a certain amount, then attack or defend, depending on their moves and ranges. Here, characters have action points, of which you can get a couple each round as it starts, that you can then spend on moves, each of which has its own pattern of attack. For example, a strong attack might cost 1 action point, but maybe it mows down characters all in a line right in front of you. But another might cost 3, but hit an entire line 3 deep of enemies all around you for a larger amount of damage. Depending on the number of action points here, and that you've saved up, that means you might be able to attack 3 times, 2 in one direction with your special move, Flowery Lotus Headbanger, and then onto an enemy behind you with the typical magical lucky horseshoe attack. Now, many of the moves charge your charge meter. When filled, it allows you to synchronize hits with friendly main story units for absolutely apocalyptic levels of damage. This is worth using, as on the higher difficulties, dying actually isn't at all rare. Also, attacking from the rear or side can do far more damage than attacking from the front, so you have to really watch what the skill says and its expected damage level and what it might be. It can actually surprise you. Also, when attacking and defending, you affect the morale of your own group and the enemies, and this can result in enemies cowering before you as you just beat the absolute crap out of them, or they can be bolstered up by past successes, hitting even harder. All units on your team or that you fight have a type, like defense or spirit, that does something unique for them. One group of men might take half damage on any front-based attack, while another group might heal up at the end of every turn. Paying attention to your enemies and your own unit types is vital, especially in those higher difficulties. Now, as you guys know, I test difficulty in all the levels to see how the game works for old hands at tactical battle games, all the way to folks that might just jump into this as their first title. And I have to say, its difficulty pattern actually works pretty well, with easy following its namesake and hard being a mixture of having the right equipment, skills, and luck needed to barely scratch through those battles. When you're not fighting, you can upgrade weapons, you can take the attributes of one weapon and add that to another, and you can of course buy and sell items. And at the end of each match, you get special treasures. Now, additionally, every single main story character has a skill board. This is a massive number of skills you buy with points you get from performing well in battle. This is quantity over quality, though, because they seem artificially tacked on, with +5 to dex and +5 to strength, and that kind of attribute bonus being the majority of upgrades, and it really numbs you out. Now, this doesn't mean later you won't be a goddamn juggernaut, just gutter sniping enemies with one hit of your ringed sword. It just means by the time you get there, you might already be asleep. And really sadly, in so many different areas, that's the issue with this game. While there are a number of variations on attack, grouping up with others, difficulty levels, and so forth, what Godseekers really misses is true depth, and it numbs you in other places. is. It doesn't take long to understand the point system, the synchro attacks, the unit types, or how and which enemies to attack, and that means very quickly you're left with a humdrum experience of mediocrity in battle. Sure, zooming in on your character, watch him take out an entire legion of bad guys is fun, or smashing the X button during the last part of a synchro attack until your enemy dips into massive negative hit point land. But it's short-lived, in a game that really overstays its welcome in most ways. Even many hours into the title with the Path of Destiny story missions unlocked to learn more about the characters and unlock special rewards, it did not grab me, because the main base battle game just isn't deep enough. And of course, all that brings us to fun factor, and for a couple hours this was fine, but in a strange way, it is an assault on fun later on. The music becomes absolutely drearily repetitive, even if it's good. The combat isn't incredibly deep, the locations are incredibly bland, the units are incredibly bland, and a title that by changing its perspective could have absolutely hammered out the details and presentation, did none of that, appearing far more like a fan-made mod than a real game proper. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for a sale, rent, or never touch it again rating scale. This is actually a rent or / deep sale because this is actually a digital only title from what I can see. So while there's a ton, well over 20 hours of content here in the main game on hard difficulty and all the other extra stuff that's going to add a ton of hours to it, there's no way I could tell people it would be worth full price going through that. The real sadness here is it doesn't even hold its own against similar games in the genre, whether it be presentation, gameplay, systems, or story. And, well, that's pretty much all that matters. When it comes to games, Dynasty Warriors has always danced on the raggedy edge of genericness, and this time, wow, they absolutely nailed it. As always, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you dislike the video, give it a thumbs down. Maybe check out Patreon, where I give out every single game that I review, or follow me on Twitter, or check us out on Reddit. As always, peace out, and enjoy the rest of your week.